land. Hello everybody out there in YouTube land, Matt here from Carbuyer. So we're doing one of these Google Hangout kind of things where you're going to ask me some questions and I'm going to answer them. Hopefully they're mainly about cars, but I will try and answer some of the more random stuff too. So let's start with the question that we have already got in. So the obvious one, what is my favorite car? I've driven so many cars, and different cars are good for different things. So in terms of sports cars, I think the best all-rounder is a Porsche 911, and I would probably go with the GTS. You know, it gets extra bits of kit on it, which makes it a bit more sporty. Oh, you'll have to excuse me for that, guys. I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to tech, and I accidentally had another video playing there. Excuse me, sorry for that. Anyway, yeah, Porsche 911 GTS. So it gets extra bits of kit and just makes the 911 just that little bit better. If it's an all-round family car, well, it's a different matter. The Volkswagen Passat is very good. I'm interested to see what the new Skoda Superb is like as well, because you know it should be slightly bigger than Passat. And very, very well priced. So let's go to another question anyway. Right, are American cars up to European standards like the Ford Raptor? Well, big 4x4 there. And the Corvette Stingray. Now, this is really interesting. I actually want to drive the Corvette Stingray. Haven't tried it before, but a lot of people who've driven it say that it's, you know, it's up there with what us Europeans do. So it's up there almost with like the Porsche 911. Now, Corvette and Chevrolet have been banging on that their latest Corvette is always as good as a 911. Has never been the case before, but apparently it is. Now we're hoping to do a video for that, unfortunately not for Carbuyer, but for our sister title, Auto Express, in the very near future. We just need, well, Chevrolet to lend us the Stingray. So come on, Chevrolet, sort us out. Okay, let's have another question then. Okay, I can't make 1 PM on Monday. Well, why not? Who's this? Is Sebastian Roberts? Why aren't you here, mate? You know, we've been waiting for you. And anyway, so Sebastian wants to know. He wants to know if I think the Mercedes G-Class, Ford EcoSport, and Vauxhall Adam Rocks Air are bad cars. Apparently, they are the worst reviews. When I say the worst reviews, the most negative reviews we have ever done on Carbuyer. Okay, so I drove the Ford EcoSport, and it was a bit of a disappointment. I think Ford are ever so slightly embarrassed about it as well. They don't tend to talk about the EcoSport much. Although it's based on a Fiesta, it's like they've taken the brilliant Fiesta and then just made it bad. It's not a great car. It's quite expensive as well. The trim isn't great in it compared to the European Fords. I think it's built in Brazil. But yeah, it's not a great car, and there are better choices in that class of vehicle for your money. I mean, I'd rather have a Peugeot 2008, for example. It feels nicer inside, and I'd say it's better to drive as well. Okay, so I'm just going to have a little look at what other questions we've got coming through. So you'll just have to excuse me. Here we go. Right, all right. So, so someone wants to know if they are buying a small family car, what to go for. Well, the choice is really good. So, I mean, the top picks, the VW products are good. So you've got like the Golf, obviously, but if you want to save some money on the Golf and get something that, in my opinion, looks better, then Seat Leon is a really good choice. It feels really nice to drive. The quality inside is impressive. Get the same range of engines as you get with the Golf. That's a great car. Ford Focus, always at the top of that pack. You know, it's always, you know, there or thereabouts. The revisions that they've done recently that Ford have made to the car have made it better. The styling at the front is a lot better than it was before. So it's a nicer car to look at. You've got a new infotainment system as well, which is much easier to use. And it's not quite the best on the market, but the infotainment system is pretty good. And the new not Siri, that's Apple, isn't it? The new Ford Sync system, which is voice activated, it has a lot more functions than ever before. For instance, you can just say, take me to the nearest restaurant, and it will work out where the nearest restaurant is and direct you to the sat nav. Pretty good. Another car in that class, yeah, the Mazda 3 is a good car as well. I mean, it's very, very sporty to drive the Mazda 3. So if you're someone who wants to have a practical family car, but you would also like a car that's, your drive to work takes you down a B road or something, the Mazda 3 is very good for that. And it looks good as well. I mean, it does stand out, the Mazda. Very pleased, you know, very impressed with that car, actually. I like Mazdas, but then I've got a Mazda myself, got an MX-5. Okay, so another question that we've got. Let me just check Twitter, actually. So, right. Which is best, an Audi A4 or BMW 3 Series? It's an easy one, this. I prefer the BMW 3 Series. The Audi A4 is now getting a little bit long in the tooth, shall we say. I think it's being replaced. It's either later this year or next year. So you'll get a whole new version of the A4 built on a new chassis. And so that, it's going to be interesting to see how that compares to the BMW 3 Series and the Mercedes C-Class. I think the Mercedes isn't quite as good as the BMW. I think the BMW is a better all-round proposition, and I prefer the diesel engines as well in the BMW. They've just updated their two-cylinder, rubbish, their 2-litre 4-cylinder diesel. It's a lot smoother and quieter than before, and the Mercedes 4-cylinder diesels are a little bit rattly. But other than that, I do really like the C-Class as well. Right, let's get back onto Facebook. Let's have a look. Okay, so bear with me while I get the next question, people. It's not exactly BBC levels of production here, I'm afraid. Right. Oh, a few questions about Jeremy Clarkson. We're not going to answer those. Someone said there's something wrong with my last review of the Audi Q5. It was very matte-like in style, but I don't know. I didn't notice any difference. I just did a normal review as I always do, so that must be just a personal opinion on there. Okay, we've got a question coming from over here. Let's have a look. Oh, all right then. So, which would I have out of a Ford Fiesta and a Volkswagen Polo? Oh, gosh, that is one of the most obvious questions. That is, I personally prefer the Fiesta ever so slightly because it's just that little bit more fun to drive. Though I can see the case for the Polo. The Polo is a very nice car. It's slightly more comfortable than the Fiesta, and it's a bit more practical. The way the seats fold a bit better. You got a bit more of a practical boot, although the boot sizes I think are pretty much identical. You just don't have that kind of annoying load lip and like the ridge when you fold the seats down with the Polo, because you can get an adjustable boot floor. But yeah, I think overall, because the Ford's just that little bit better to drive, I would probably go with the Ford. But you know, it's horses for courses. And actually, so coming on from that, there's someone's commenting about my review of the Polo GTI and how I said it wasn't quite as much fun as the Ford Fiesta ST. Well, yeah, it's not as much fun. It's a really good car for going quickly, especially on an unfamiliar road. It does that thing with VW Sports. They just give you so much confidence, so you can just put the car wherever you want to go and it just goes there. It's unflappable, but you never feel quite as connected to it as you do in the Ford Fiesta ST, which it's just, I know you can feel exactly what the car's doing through the seat. Yeah, it is. I think once again, the Ford is the more sporty and the more fun car to drive, but then the Polo comes back at it by being better to drive every day. So if it was your everyday car and you have to do just normal commuting and you want something that just has that bit of performance when you need it, and when you encounter a twisty road you can have some fun, the Polo is better. But if your commute does involve lots of B roads, then yeah, take the Ford. I mean, that's a really, really nice car. Okay, so one of the questions that people have been asking us recently is about our new reviews that we put online. So we did this review on the Fiesta when we broke it up. I think it was into 5 or 6 sections. So we had like the introduction to it, and then you have all the different sections that you can then click to. And I'm not sure the feedback from you guys on YouTube wasn't particularly positive. So I wanted to explain why we're doing that, and first of all, to point out that that is not in any way a replacement for our normal style of videos. It's in addition to. So for some key cars, we're going to do these extended reviews as well as the normal video review. So you don't need to worry that we're changing our format completely. We're going to try it again with another key car and do one of these 6-part reviews, but they're more actually designed for our website, carbuyer.co.uk. So they actually specifically work with the different review sections on our website rather than necessarily for YouTube. But we thought that you guys, you'd still want to see what content we're producing, so we put it out there for you. And like I say, we got some feedback which wasn't necessarily positive. Okay, right, let's have a look for some of these questions here. Someone, the national channel wants me to review the Lada Niva one day. Don't think it's sold in the UK or ever likely to be either. So on Carbuyer, you've probably realised already, we only review cars that are on sale in the UK. That's why every car we review has the steering wheel on the right hand side, because we review them here in the UK in full UK spec, because we're a buying guide for UK car buyers. Okay, right. What do you think about MC? Okay, someone's saying that someone's wondering why British journalists are so biased towards Ford. Now, we're not. We just, Ford cars built in Europe and for the European market can be slightly different to those for the rest of the world. And generally, Ford makes really good cars. They're especially good at making cars that are very pleasing to drive. The dynamics are usually very good on Ford. So as motoring journalists, we do put a lot of stock by how a car feels to drive. And that's why we do like Fords. But, you know, we pick them up on, like I just was telling you about the Ford Fiesta, we pick them up for maybe a lack of practicality or sometimes build quality issues where they're relevant. But we're not biased. We're not biased like some people say that we're biased towards Volkswagen group cars. And we're not. We test all the cars and we evaluate them. And we just give our honest opinion of what we think about them. Sometimes it might not be the opinion that you might have, but that's our job. You know, got some more questions coming in. What do I think about driverless cars? I've actually been for Auto Express. I had to go in an Audi RS7, and I actually drove an RS7 around a racetrack, timed myself, and then I went as a passenger in a driverless car, which did the same thing as me. Thankfully, I just about beat the driverless car, but I think that it wasn't running at its full performance. But it's interesting to see them in operation and what they can do. Do I think they're a good thing or a bad thing? Well, in certain respects, I think they could be a very good thing, such as just like driverless taxis. They can take you where you want to go. You don't then need to, you know, if you want to go out for a night in the town, have a drink, you can get in your driverless car, drive it there. Maybe it can just park up and then drive you home. I mean, that would be the ideal. I'm not entirely sure whether that's likely in the near future. But when I was testing this Audi RS7, this driverless RS7, Audi was saying that the plan would be to have, let's say, you drive your car to a parking lot and then the car will park itself. So you don't have to go through the faff of looking for a parking space. So effectively what it will give you is valet parking. And I think one of my colleagues, I think it was last week, they were actually going on the Autobahn in another Audi, which was driverless, and it was driving a bit through town and then on the Autobahn and then to its location. And that was not in a controlled environment. It was out there on public roads with other drivers. And he hasn't been back yet. So I trust everything is all right. He was tweeting at the weekend, so I'm assuming it all went well. But yeah, I'll let you know how that got on another time. But I don't think it's something we're going to be reviewing in the near future on Carbuyer. Okay, so another question. What do I think about electric vehicles and the government grant? And what is my favourite electric vehicle? Well, I've run a couple of electric vehicles. I used to run a Mitsubishi i-MiEV, quite liked it, but it was flawed in many areas. I'm currently running a BMW i3 range extender, and last week for Auto Express magazine, I actually drove the car from here in London to Amsterdam. The reason I went to Amsterdam is because I think Amsterdam is the second most populated city for electric cars. It's got the second highest proportion of electric cars in Europe. And so I tried to drive there the whole way using electric power alone with limited success, and then came back using the car's range extender. And the interesting thing is that using the range extender just to produce electricity for the batteries, the car actually ran for, I think it did 40 miles per gallon, which isn't bad really. And for the rest of the time, I've been driving the car in the city of London, just using electric power completely, charging it up when I'm at work or at night. And it's been great. So I like electric cars. I like the way they feel to drive. I think for going longer journeys, the infrastructure isn't quite there yet. We basically need much more fast charging facilities. So not even just a quick charge, which take 4 hours. You need it to be able to charge up in about half an hour. So there's still limitations there. As for the government grant, well, the government grant, you know, if you buy an electric car in the UK, the government will give you £5,000 towards the cost, which is a big incentive, but that grant is apparently running out. And one of the reasons it's running out, and it's run out quicker than they thought, is because of the Mitsubishi PHEV. Loads of people have bought them. I think over 10,000 sales already in less than a year in the UK. And so lots of people have been using that grant towards buying those cars. And so the grant's almost run out. But there is talk that there's going to be a new form of grant. What form it will take is not decided yet, and we won't know it really until after the general election. Okay, right. This is quite a tricky question. So someone wants to know, what is the best car between the Skoda Citigo, the Volkswagen Up, and the Seat Me? And as most of you will know, they're pretty much the same car underneath the skin. They just have slightly different styling and different pricing. And it does pretty much come down to that. I mean, the Citigo is ever so slightly better value for money than the Up. And so, yeah, I'd say that's the one to go for rather than the Me, because, I mean, this is a personal thing, actually. I'm not so keen on the look of the Me compared to the Citigo, but they're all good cars. And in some ways, you know, if you're looking at a Polo or a Fabia, you might want to just check out the Citigo or the Up first, because they might just about be enough for you. So yeah, I do really like those cars. Get some more questions off here. Oh, come on. Okay, so what do you think has changed the most regarding cars in the last 20 years? So I've been a motoring journalist for 14 years, so got quite a bit of experience testing cars over a long period of time. Safety is a massive difference. I mean, how much safer cars are today than they were, and not just like the crash protection. We're talking about the actual active safety systems which prevent a crash in the first place. So yeah, like lots of, like, for instance, we were just talking about the VW Up and the Skoda Citigo. I mean, you can specify those cars with active city braking. So if you're like driving in town and you're not paying attention, the car in front of you stops, the car will automatically brake itself at low speeds and can even prevent an accident in the first place. And there's all things like lane departure warning, things will steer you back into lane if you do start weaving out of lane. There's so many new safety systems on cars, and Volvos, they can actually spot cyclists and pedestrians as well as, you know, larger vehicles as well as vehicles. So the active safety is one of the key things that has really changed. Also economy as well. Manufacturers have been put under a lot of pressure by the governments to improve the economy of their cars, and they've really come on leaps and bounds in the last 20 years, the kind of economy you can get, especially with the diesel engines and the refinement of the diesel engines. I mean, diesels used to be kind of really, like 20 years ago, rattly, noisy things, whereas now they are very smooth and they can deliver quite a lot of performance as well. So let's have a look. Let's go for another question. So what did I eat for my lunch? Do you know what? I haven't had my lunch yet. I'm doing this. I'm going to have it afterwards. So, right. Do I like a Volkswagen Golf better or the Mazda 3? Depends on my mood. Very, very close this is. The Volkswagen is probably, it's a bit more refined, a bit quieter. The suspension's ever so slightly softer and more relaxing. Mazda is more fun to drive, just feels sharper. Personally, for me, probably today I'll go for the Mazda. Yeah. Okay, let's go for some other questions off Twitter. Have I driven the Skoda Octavia Scout? I don't believe I have. No, I think Ginny might have done that, or Rebecca. Remember Rebecca? What? Why are pickup trucks not so popular in the UK? This is from a guy, obviously, in the USA. Fuel bills. The other one might be a styling thing. Even it's still seen as being commercial vehicles here in the UK. So, you know, a certain type of person would probably want to drive that. But yeah, I think we just prefer the normal SUVs. And we would never be able to have something like an F-150. I remember driving one of those around the States, and I parked it next to a Range Rover, and it just made the Range Rover look like a city car. It's just so huge. So maybe our streets are a little bit narrow. Someone asking me a political question? No, I can do cars, but I'm not doing politics. That's an interesting question. Volvo says no deaths in their cars by 2020. Is this feasible? Do you know what? It's quite a big ask, but, you know, they've put the bar there. They've said that. People are going to be expecting them to deliver. I mean, we're not going to forget this. It's written down. It's in the diary. You know, people, can they do it? Well, they've always been at the forefront of car safety, haven't they? So why not? And it's going to be interesting to see, but why not? Okay, I wasn't very insightful, sorry. What do I think is the fuel of the future? Do I think it's going to be like that scene, you know, is Back to the Future 2, is it? When you just put some rubbish into the car and it just uses a nuclear reactor to power the car? Well, yeah, that ain't going to happen. But electricity, I think all cars going electrified is quite a long way off. Maybe, I think it's going to be a mixture of two. Maybe in town that, yes, we will have more electric cars, but I still think normal fossil fuels are going to be the mainstay for a long time yet. For electric cars to really be viable on such a similar scale, we need to change. We need to actually sort out our power stations. I mean, I think for the demands on the national grid, we'd probably need to be running nuclear power. I just don't think that we could generate enough energy from electricity for everyone's car if we were using them in the same way as we are at the moment. So I'm still thinking in the next 10 years, easily, probably beyond, way beyond, in fact, we're going to be running on fossil fuels for quite a while. So for all of you petrol heads out there, don't worry, electric cars aren't going to take over just yet, but they will one day. What do I think about this? The Suzuki Vitara 2015. Unfortunately, I haven't driven it. It's on our list to do, so we'll be getting it in soon. I'm not sure who's going to review it. Might be me, might be Ginny. We'll see, but we're definitely going to be reviewing it. Okay, what's my favourite Sportswagen model right now? The Peugeot 308 SW or the Skoda Octavia? Well, Carbuyer's best estate car is actually the Peugeot 308 SW. So that's your answer. I actually just did a video with it the other day. It's got a massive boot, massive, and it's really flexible as well. Yeah, fold the seats down completely flat, no load lip, loads of space, very square. It's a really practical car, and it looks good as well. And I like the interior of the Peugeot. I think it's nice, stylish, feels upmarket. It's a very nice car. Okay, right. Woo. Do you know what? I've done half an hour already. I'm going to give you another 5 minutes, and then we're done. All right. I've got to eat something. Should auto parking be banned? If the person can't park, then he/she shouldn't be driving. Yeah. No, of course it shouldn't be banned. You know, if you live in somewhere like London, then certain people could do with a little bit of help parking. You see so many curbed alloys where they've been just grinding them up the curbs, and it would probably stop people bumping into other cars as well when they're trying to park. Now, if people need some help parking, then why not? Why not? But yeah, I personally, me personally, I can park better than the auto park systems, because with those you have to, like, you've got to know where the place is that you want to go into. You have to activate the button, drive past it, then reverse into it. Sometimes when you're in traffic, there's no time for that. You're just driving along, there's a space, and you have to get into it straight away. But for people who struggle with parking, yeah, you know, why not? Okay. This is interesting. Ford Fiesta or Mazda for mass market in driving dynamics? Now, I recently just, in fact, it hasn't gone live yet, the Mazda 2, just driven the Mazda 2, and I used to love the old Mazda 2, great thing to drive, and the new one's good as well, handles really well. Yeah, and like the old car, which is a bit fidgety on rough surfaces, this one's much better, much more composed. Is it better than the Fiesta? It's very, very close. The difference is the steering. The steering on the Fiesta is better than on the Mazda. So for driving dynamics, the Fiesta just edges it, but it's very close. Both of them at the top, I'd say, for the super mini class in terms of driving dynamics. Getting some more questions off Facebook here. All right. Okay. Someone saw on Twitter that I was driving the Audi A3 Cabriolet. Now, would I recommend the diesel, but which is the best engine? So now it depends on what you're doing with the car. If you do lots and lots of miles, then yes, the diesel is going to be the best bet, although part of the fun of a convertible is hearing the exhaust note. And the exhaust note, even on those diesels, they're very good from on the Audi. They don't sound as good as the petrol. I personally, if I was having that car, would have the 1.4 TSI. I don't know, is it TSI with Audi or is it just FSI? I don't know. But it's the turbocharged 1.4, and on the Audi it has cylinder deactivation. So when you're just cruising, I think 2 of the cylinders, they just shut down, so you use less fuel. And I ran a Seat Leon SC, which had a similar engine without the deactivation, and it was pretty economical, 45 mpg, and I drove it pretty quickly. So you're probably going to be able to get about 50 miles per gallon in that Audi convertible with that 1.4 turbo petrol engine. So I personally, unless I was doing like 15,000 miles a year, I would go for the 1.4 engine. Love that engine; it's brilliant. Okay, another question. Someone asking whether in between a Fiesta ST or a Corsa VXR. No, one of my colleagues on Auto Express has just driven the Corsa VXR and liked it. Did they say it was better than the Fiesta ST? Not quite. Okay. Right, let's go for something else. Oh, this is a good one. What car surprised me the most? Tesla Model S. This quite interesting. Tesla Model S, I was blown away by it. The week before, I had a BMW i8. Love the i8. I think it's a great thing. But then when I got in the Tesla, and it was the high performance version, not the dual motor one, the P85. Man, it was just so incredible how this company has come from nowhere and it builds an electric car, pure electric car, better than all the major manufacturers. It's really, really stunning. And the acceleration in it, when you're just cruising along, let's say you're doing 30, you put your foot down, that electric motor bang, just comes in like that, and you take off like a rocket. Whereas the the i8, it's like really fast, because you've got a petrol motor providing, I think it's just the larger part of the power, you still get that revving effect. As the revs rise, you get more and more power. But the Tesla was just that instant acceleration for just nipping past other cars. It was incredible. And how they created this car, which is spacious inside, it's got a practical boot, you've got another boot at the front. The inside's pretty well thought out. You know, I was really blown away by the Tesla, and I'm very impressed. But then I do like electric cars. Okay, so I'm going to do one more question, right? This is it. what was my first car? So the first car that I ever had was a Ford Fiesta, and that was my own personal car. So yeah, Ford Fiesta. The first car I ever drove, now this will show my age, was a Mini Metro. But yeah, it didn't last very long. I had an accident in it, and it kind of had to go to the scrap heap afterwards. So okay, I'll just do one more. Can you do a hangout every week? No, I'm not going to do that. Might try and do one more regularly than we have done. I think the last one was a year ago, but maybe I'll try and do one maybe every other month. We'll see. We'll see what the views are like on this anyway. Anyway, guys, thanks very much for your time. There might be a little bit of faffing now while I try and end the session, and it'll look a little bit amateur hour, but here we go. I'm going to stop broadcast now.